We're restructuring, Richard said, not looking up. Kayla was already seated behind my desk. I didn't say anything. Just sat down slowly across from him, like it was any other Monday. HR was in the room too. Janine, the one who used to ask me for help with Excel formulas. I'd been at Orion's for 17 years. Led cloud infrastructure architect. Built everything from the ground up. Now I was being dismissed with 2 sentences and a printed form. Richard slid the envelope across the desk like it burned his fingers. Nothing personal, he added. I didn't open it. I already knew what it said. Severance, NDA, access revocation. Standard protocol. Kayla stood up then, walked around the room like she owned it. Her lanyard still had the intern tag from last summer. The same girl who once asked me what a subnet was, now wore my badge and my title. Her hair was pink this week. Neon. Bright enough to hurt. We need voices that speak Gen Z, Richard said. People who move fast. I looked at the server room through the glass wall behind him. Still humming. Still solid. Still mine for the next 43 minutes, apparently. I see, I said. Then I stood up. No handshake. No protest. Just picked up my notebook and the stainless steel water bottle I kept for 12 years, scratched, dented, dependable. Can I take the plant? I asked, nodding toward the small snake plant by the window. Richard blinked. Sure. It was the only thing in that room still growing. Outside, the office was too quiet. No one met my eyes. Not even Dylan, the junior engineer I mentored since his internship. He stared at his monitor like it had answers. I walked to my desk. Kayla had already taken the good chair. My login screen was replaced by hers. There was a post-it note stuck on the monitor: do not touch. New setup in progress. 17 years and I had become a security risk in under an hour. I took the stairs. Avoided the elevator. I didn't want to hear the small talk, the fake sympathy. The "I'm so sorry" from people who hadn't returned my last code review. Outside, the wind was sharp. August in San Francisco always pretended to be colder than it was. I got to my car. Sat down. Closed the door. No radio. No tears. Just silence. Then the message came in. A Teams notification slipped through before they cut off my credentials. Sorry to hear, Elena, you didn't deserve that. From Marcus, security engineer. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Simple. Clean. Then I opened the glove box and pulled out the USB drive I kept there. Black. Unmarked. Redundant architecture backups. Not company data, just system logs. Snapshots. Notes. All things no one had asked for, because no one remembered how fragile the foundation was. They didn't fire a roll. They severed the one person who understood how it all held together. I leaned back, eyes on the glass facade of Orion's. The company looked the same from outside. Polished. Confident. But the infrastructure was laced with legacy systems no one dared touch. Multi-region failovers with undocumented triggers. Secrets buried under layers of temporary fixes that became permanent through neglect. And only I knew where the pressure points were. No, I didn't feel anger. Only precision. A sense of alignment. Like the gears of a clock finally clicking into place. I started the car. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Tomorrow, they'd realize what they had lost. Not just a system architect. But the quiet failsafe they never even noticed was keeping everything alive. And Kayla? She'd touched something she shouldn't. Flip a switch she didn't understand. Ask the wrong question to the wrong server. And then 6 seconds of silence. And nothing would ever be the same again. I joined Orion's when the whole operation still fit inside a warehouse in South San Francisco. Back then, the cloud was still a buzzword. Servers were actual machines, not drop-down menus. My first assignment was to virtualize the finance cluster. No documentation, no roadmap, just tangled hardware and a budget that barely covered the cables. I worked 14-hour days that quarter. Slept in the server room during one December freeze when the HVAC failed. No one asked me to. No one noticed I did. I stayed because I believed in it. The tech. The people. The problem we were trying to solve. I watched the company grow from 50 to 500. From one cloud provider to 3. Every migration, every disaster recovery drill, every audit they called me first. And I always picked up. I wasn't loud about it. Didn't post on LinkedIn. Didn't schmooze at conferences. I just made sure things didn't break. And when they did, I made sure no one remembered they had. We didn't use Jira at the beginning, just a shared spreadsheet and a few printed diagrams taped to the wall. I still remember when I drew our first cross-region architecture on a whiteboard. Everyone clapped. It felt like something permanent. Something mine. Funny how things fade. 2 years ago, Richard came in. MBA, executive polish, big talk about transformational velocity. He called me the legacy layer in one of his first town halls. I laughed at the time. Thought he meant it fondly. I was wrong. He brought in consultants. Fancy slides. Terms like cloud-native modernization and zero-trust paradigm. They asked a lot of questions about systems they didn't understand, then recommended we replace them with tools that couldn't scale past beta. I pushed back quietly. Wrote detailed memos. Flagged risks. Proposed phased transitions. None of it stuck. They needed someone to blame when timelines slipped. Someone to sunset. 6 months ago, Kayla arrived. She's here to learn from the best, Richard told me. So I taught her. Showed her the vault logic. The dynamic IP filters. The failover orchestration we'd stitched together during the Log4j scramble last year. She took notes on her iPad. Didn't ask many questions. Nodded a lot. I assumed she was overwhelmed. Turns out, she was observing the layout before taking the keys. The signs were there. They just weren't loud. I was pulled from the internal Slack channel where we discussed upcoming deployments. Just a streamlining of communication, they said. My calendar invites dried up. My access to billing dashboards was revoked for security reasons. Kayla started replying to client queries before I could. 2 weeks before I was fired, I found her name in the Git commit history reverting my code. She hadn't asked me why I wrote that module the way I did. She didn't know it was patching a flaw in our provider's throttling logic. But she deleted it anyway. The system staggered that weekend. I fixed it quietly. Didn't mention her name in the incident log. I told myself this was just evolution. That the work would speak for itself. But code doesn't speak. And silence, in the wrong hands, gets rewritten. One night, I stayed late. Everyone else had gone. Even the cleaners. I sat in the dim hum of the data center, watching the soft pulse of server lights. That rhythm was more familiar than my own breath. I remembered the time the East region failed because of a DNS propagation issue. We lost 12 seconds of up to me or worst ever. I rebuilt the routing logic within the hour. No one remembered. But I did. Amy wife once asked me, what's the point of working so hard if no one sees it? I said, it's not about being seen. It's about being right. But even that answer was starting to sound thin. 3 days before they let me go, I submitted a report outlining vulnerabilities in our container orchestration pipeline. No one replied. 2 days before, Kayla gave a presentation to the exec team about her vision for infrastructure as culture. I wasn't invited. But I saw the deck, someone left it open on a shared drive. Slide 5 showed a diagram I'd drawn 6 years ago. Slide 6 called it the old way. They say you can't feel a system breaking until the last node goes silent. But that's not true. You feel it long before. In missing invitations. In unfamiliar smiles. In how your name stops appearing on the lunch order list. By the time the final cut comes, you've already bled out. All that's left is to decide what to do with the silence. The day after they let me go, I woke up at 612. Out of habit, not purpose. No alarm. No calls waiting. Just a quiet apartment and the strange hum of a city moving without me. I made coffee. Black. 2 sugars. Sat at the kitchen counter and opened my laptop, not the company one. My own. Offline. Air-gapped. A vault of old architecture diagrams, audit logs, network behavior reports. Nothing proprietary. Nothing stolen. Just echoes. Snapshots. Notes I took for myself over the years because no one else ever would. I wasn't looking for revenge. I just wanted to understand. What had really happened? What were they doing that made it so urgent to erase me? There was a folder. One I'd started in January. Titled simply Watchpoints. Inside were 6 log extracts. Each one dated. Each one tied to a change I hadn't approved. One in particular caught my eye: a spike in outbound traffic from our private subnet to an external endpoint. Not a huge transfer. Just wrong. The IP traced back to a shell company. A cloud analytics vendor. Newly registered. Listed as a partner. Integration in our deployment manifest, something only Richard or Kayla could have authorized. I checked the Hoy's records. Obfuscated, but the billing address matched the same city where Richard's brother ran a consulting firm. A coincidence, maybe. But then I checked the code Kayla pushed the week before I left. She'd added a containerized agent. It wasn't malicious. Not technically. Just a metrics collector. Only it wasn't collecting app metrics. It was mapping user behavior. Session by session. And sending that data out of our environment off platform. I remembered that board meeting 3 months ago. The one where Richard mentioned IPO readiness. He used the word leverage 6 times in 10 minutes. No one asked what that meant. Now I knew. They weren't just preparing for IPO. They were inflating valuation by injecting behavioral analytics data that didn't belong to Jacinto pitch decks. They needed me gone because I built the walls. And they wanted Windows now. I stared at the script line Kayla wrote. 1 line. 60 characters. It bypassed our data residency enforcement. Something I'd spent years hardening. She had no idea what it meant. She probably thought it was just another flag to make the dashboards cleaner. But the output wasn't going to dashboards. It was going to them. I pulled up the old backup of our server orchestration matrix. The root level access was tied to service tokens. And I'd built those tokens with one failsafe: if the request came from outside a set of verified keys, the session would auto-expire. I'd disabled that rule 3 months ago. Because Richard insisted it was too restrictive. But I hadn't deleted it. Just commented it out. Now I opened the script again. Uncommented the line. Saved. Then I ran a simulation on my local clone. The system flagged the outbound call. Terminated the connection. Flagged the sender. And sent a silent alert to me. Still worked. Even after all the versions, all the policy changes, they hadn't stripped it out. Because they never knew it was there. I sat back in my chair. The sun had risen. The coffee was cold. I felt nothing. No adrenaline. No rage. Just gravity. 17 years, and I had become the backup. They'd replaced me. But they were still running on my structure. Still calling functions I built. Still assuming the lights would stay on, the audits would stay clean, the silence would hold. But it wouldn't. Not anymore. Because I wasn't holding it. I didn't send any emails. Didn't make any calls, just activated the watcher script. Not destructive. Not illegal. It would do one thing: log every outbound data request, compare it to policy, and flag any violation. And if violations exceeded a certain threshold, 6, to be exact, it would trigger a rollback. Snapshots gone. Keys revoked. Containers isolated. All in under 6 seconds. No explosions. No smoke. Just the quiet, irreversible logic of a system returning to a safe state. They wouldn't even know it was me. Not right away. I closed the laptop. Looked out at the skyline. Still gray. Still moving. Somewhere downtown, Kayla was probably prepping a demo. Maybe even planning to present to investors next week. With my name still buried in the credits of a system she didn't understand. And Richard? He'd smile. Shake hands. Quote some line about digital resilience. Not knowing that every line of his future now ran through a system wired to truth. And the truth, like code, doesn't care who's talking. I didn't act right away. The script was live. Quiet. Watching. Each violation logged. Each unauthorized transfer noted. The threshold hadn't been hit. Yet. I didn't want to break anything. Not unless they insisted. Instead, I made tea. Sat by the window and reread the document Richard had given Meth formal termination letter. Buried halfway through, under the language of HR etiquette and severance terms, was a clause. Employee agrees to forego access and control of any proprietary logic, code, or systems not previously documented or transferred. It was a hedge. Legal positioning. A gamble that what I built had already been captured. But it hadn't. Because no one ever funded documentation. No one ever asked for diagrams. Just results. So that clause? It was nothing more than hope. Hope that the system would keep humming, and I would disappear. I smiled. Then opened a folder labeled Sundown. It wasn't a plan for destruction. It was insurance. Built over years. Layer by layer. A network of routines, checks, and emergency fallbacks I wrote not out of paranoia, but necessity. Because when you're the only one who knows the system, you don't assume it will always be safe. You prepare for when it isn't. I recompiled the rollback module. Updated the trigger 6 violations within 72 hours. New condition added 1 attempt to escalate privilege from a non-admin account, immediate execution. I encrypted the script, embedded it into a decoy container, and uploaded it through a still active API endpoint that Kayla's last update had forgotten to close. They hadn't revoked my keys. They hadn't even rotated them. I didn't feel triumphant. Just affirmed. That night, I went for a walk. Down to the old ferry terminal, past the stretch of offices where Orion's once held offsites before we went hybrid. The windows were dark. The lobby plants overgrown. No one really went into the office anymore. Not unless it was for optics. I passed a building under renovation, bare steel frames, open sky. It looked like something half-born, half-forgotten. That's what systems were, too. Until someone made them permanent. And I had. But now? Now I would let the weight return to where it belonged. The next morning, I got a message. Not from Richard. Not from Kayla. From Marcus, the security engineer. Hey. Weird question. Do you remember adding some kind of outbound filter to the container images? We're seeing some strange flags in the logs. I typed a response. Then deleted it. Let them guess. By noon, 2 violations had been triggered. Unauthorized outbound session. Unrecognized API request from a privileged account. They were testing limits. Maybe building something new. Maybe preparing for that investor demo. I went back to my chair. Watched the log screen. Watched the clock. Day 2. 10:47 a.m. Violation 3, a data packet routed through an anonymized endpoint. Kayla was getting bolder. Or sloppier. I spent the afternoon writing. Not code. A letter. To the board. Not to send yet. Just to draft. Just in case. I included diagrams. Timeline. Network flow. No accusations. Just technical facts. Just enough for someone who understood infrastructure to see exactly what was being done and by whom. I encrypted it. Saved a version to a USB key. Dropped that key in a safety deposit box downtown. 40 per year for peace of mind. Violation 4 came in at 7:13 p.m. I was making dinner. Something simple: rice and grilled vegetables. The alert blinked once. I didn't even turn my head. I already knew. That night, I checked LinkedIn. Kayla had just posted a photo. Smiling. Glass of champagne in hand. Caption: prepping for Monday. Big things coming. Cloud Queen. I stared at it for a while. Didn't feel anger. Didn't even feel smug. Only recognition. She didn't know the house she was standing in was held up by bolts she had already loosened. Day 3. I woke up early. Not out of habit this time. Out of instinct. Made coffee. Sat down. Opened the log dashboard. Violation 5, 3:17 a.m. A scheduled batch job pulled PII data into an external staging bucket. The kind of move that looked harmless in a pitch deck. Until someone asked where the encryption keys were stored. And why no one could produce them. I refreshed the page. Waited. At 10:22 a.m. it came. Violation 6. Kayla had tried to elevate her access level to root. From a non-admin account. The watcher script blinked once. Then went dark. Rollback initiated. Snapshot revocation. Container freeze. Token destruction. All in 5.8 seconds. The system didn't crash. It simply stopped responding. At 10:30, I got a call. Unknown number. I let it ring out. Then another. Same number. Then Marcus, this time directly. Elena. I don't know if you're seeing this, but everything's locked. No rollback point. Dev clusters frozen. Even backup keys aren't working. Do you know what the hell is going on? I typed one line: you should talk to Richard. The next morning, I woke to 14 missed calls. 4 from Marcus. 2 from Kayla. The rest unknown. No voicemails. Just silence left in call logs, like maybe if they didn't speak the truth out loud, it wouldn't be real. I made oatmeal. Turned off notifications. Opened the paper. At 8:13 a.m. an email arrived from Orion's IT company-wide service disruption. Engineering investigating root cause. Please do not attempt manual recovery. Translation: no one knows what's happening, and someone already made it worse. I sipped my coffee and opened the dashboard. The watcher script was dormant now. Its job done. But the log still update dreadingly echoes. By 930, the real cracks began to show. The investor demo slated for noon was postponed indefinitely. Client sessions expired mid-transfer. Support tickets flooded in. And somewhere, Richard's phone must have been burning red. At 10:04 a.m., Julia pinged me. She was Kayla's former assistant. Sweet. Observant. Too quiet for corporate war games. Can I ask something off the record? She typed. Did you do something? I didn't answer immediately. She added another line. Because Richard's in the boardroom. Door locked. Voices raised. Someone said insider breach, and Kayla walked out crying. I typed back, I haven't worked there in 4 days. Whatever's happening, it's theirs now. At 11:17, a LinkedIn post went viral. A major client, Thelman Logistics, announced contract suspension due to unexpected infrastructure failure at Orion's. 1.2 million annual value. Gone in a sentence. It was shared 640 times in an hour. By noon, news hit industry blogs. Orion Z suffers critical outage amid rumored access compromise. The comments speculated acquisitions, hacks, layoffs. No one mentioned me. Good. At 243, my old work number buzzed. Still active, apparently. Caller ID Everett Bankshare of the Orion Z board. I didn't answer. He left a message. Elena, we'd appreciate a conversation. This has escalated rapidly, and we're trying to understand the sequence of events. Any insight you can offer would be invaluable. We're not interested in blame-only resolution. He sounded tired. Like a man reading a speech someone else wrote. I deleted the voicemail. By 300, Kayla's LinkedIn account was deactivated. A cached version of her Cloud Queen post still floated on Google Images. She had gone silent. Or been silenced. Either way, the timeline had caught up with her. At 4:16 p.m., Marcus messaged again. Legal teams involved now. Looking into audit trails. They think someone set this up months ago. He added we found a module in the old orchestration scripts. Trigger-based. Elegant. Did you really build that? I didn't answer. He followed up respect. The board meeting ended around 5 p.m. Julia updated me with one sentence. Richard was asked to resign. No announcement yet. No headlines. But the real decisions never start with headlines. They start behind closed doors, when the data stops lying. At 5:47, Everett emailed again. Subject line 1 last ask. The message was short. No lawyers. No PR. Just coffee. One human to another. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. But because there was nothing left to say. They fired me quietly. They assumed I'd go the same way. But I hadn't broken anything. Hadn't leaked code. Hadn't blackmailed or raged. I had simply walked away. And let the systems reveal their design. The system worked until it didn't. Until the hands holding it disappeared. That night, I walked by the old Orion Z building. Empty glass. No lights. The receptionist desk vacant. On the door, a printed note building closed due to technical emergency. Remote work in effect. I stood for a moment. Looked up at the logo. The one I used to see each morning at 7:42 a.m. 15 floors of cloud promises. Now running on scripts no one could read. I didn't smile. Didn't clench a fist. Didn't feel vindicated. Only still. Somewhere inside, I knew Richard was packing up his desk. Probably staring at a cardboard box wondering how it all unraveled so fast. He didn't understand. He never did. He thought I was expensive. Replaceable. But I was infrastructure. And when you get the foundation to save cost, collapse is just a matter of time. 2 weeks later, I joined a startup in Seattle. Smaller team. No HR buzzwords. No glass-walled boardrooms. Just engineers who asked the right questions and waited for the answers. The founder, Aditi, had been an intern under me 12 years ago. She messaged the day after the outage. You kept my first app from crashing. I never forgot. Want to build something real? I said yes. The office was nothing more than a converted garage with 3 standing desks and a server rack that hummed like a promise. They let me rebuild the foundation from scratch. No consultants. No slogans. Just code. One afternoon, while setting up deployment protocols, someone asked, "How do we future-proof this?" I answered without thinking. By making sure the people who build it stay long enough to explain it. I never mentioned Orion Z's. Never needed to. Systems remember. People forget. But not everyone. A month later, I received a handwritten letter. Thick envelope. Gold-trimmed logo. Richard's name signed at the bottom. Short. Vague. I hope you're well. We all underestimated the weight of what you carried. If there's ever a chance to reconnect, I didn't finish reading. Just folded it. Slid it into a drawer I no longer opened. That part of the story was done. No need for revenge. No victory laps. Just clean exits. Some systems collapse loudly. Some simply stop answering. And some? Some walk out the door, quietly, with everything still intact except the reason to return.